Canada is striking back with its own tariff measures in Trump's trade war that he has launched against the world.
Repeated Trump's statement by saying that Canada would be economically better off as a 51st state.
It's crazy.
In English?
His point is crazy. That's it.
Canada's skyrocketing tensions with the United States are no longer whispers in closed-door meetings. They're statements ringing out loud and clear across the global stage. For decades, these two nations have been poster children for strong diplomatic ties and mutual cooperation. But recent events suggest the relationship may be coming apart at the seams. It's the battle cry heard round the Northern Hemisphere. Enough is enough. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is leading his country into uncharted waters as they question their place alongside the United States, not only as a trade partner, but as a defense ally. At the heart of the escalating dispute lies a gigantic $13.2 billion purchase of F-35 Lightning II fighter jets. But Canada's purchase agreement with Lockheed Martin, initially viewed as essential to modernizing the Royal Canadian Air Force, could now hang by a thread. Could this be Canada's bold retaliation against former President Donald Trump's tariff policies and combative stance during the North American free trade renegotiations? Or is this the start of Canada looking beyond its southern neighbor for military, economic, and geopolitical partners? Let's dig into what's happening and why this issue could reshape not just Canada's defense strategies, but the very balance of power in North America. Since his election, Prime Minister Carney has repeatedly emphasized Canada's commitment to strategic independence, but his boldest moves yet occurred in March 2025, when he declared that Canada would no longer allow unilateral pressure from the United States to dictate its national interests. His fiery statement reflected the nation's growing frustration. For years, Canada's trade and defense cooperation with Washington have been increasingly strained under mounting tariffs on exports critical to Canada's economy: steel, aluminum, dairy, and even forestry products. But Mark Carney isn't settling for diplomatic grumbling. In a move shocking to many observers, Carney directed Canada's Defense Ministry to reevaluate its $13 billion fighter jet deal with Lockheed Martin, looking for potential off-ramps if conditions do not improve. This isn't a small maneuver. It's monumental. It signals that Canada may indeed be ready to abandon the crown jewel of modern fighter technology, the F-35 Lightning II stealth jet, in favor of alternatives from European aircraft makers. Sweden's Saab Gripen, the Eurofighter Typhoon, or France's Dassault Rafale are all reportedly under consideration. Why now? Why take such a dramatic turn? Canada has long been boxed into a corner by Trump-era trade measures that never fully healed. The steel and aluminum tariffs have hit hard, along with pressure during renegotiating NAFTA. The country's pivotal trading relationship with the U.S. has become increasingly defensive, with Canada responding to fire with fire, imposing its own tariffs and stringent export controls. But now, the tension extends far beyond trade. It spills into the realm of defense cooperation. The issue seems to hinge on whether Carney truly feels the partnership between air forces, military engineers, and defense corporations has eroded. For decades, Canada has been an active participant in the F-35 program, collaborating with other NATO allies to develop next-generation technology. Experts have called this jet the fighter of the 21st century, boasting cutting-edge radar evading, stealth capabilities, hyper-advanced sensors, and unparalleled network connectivity. Canceling participation would be more than pulling the plug on 88 jets. It would mean closing the door on an era of cooperation, effectively gutting NATO's joint defense credibility in North America. What makes this particularly consequential is geography. Canada's vast Arctic territory plays a critical role in North Atlantic defense. Its fighter fleet must patrol enormous stretches of isolated tundra and freezing waters, including zones drawing attention from countries like Russia with strategic interest in the Arctic beyond just ice and polar bears. Alarm bells are ringing on Capitol Hill, where some U.S. senators argue the short-term loss for Canada could lead to long-term vulnerability unless Ottawa rethinks its strategy. Yet, it's Mark Carney sees the situation differently. Instead of folding under Washington's pressure, Ottawa is exploring alternatives that could transform its defense policies into something unprecedented. On March 12th, Canadian Defense Minister Bill Blair hinted that the first wave of F-35 jets might still be accepted, but the rest of Canada's fighter fleet could shift toward European models if guarantees aren't made. Blair's statement suggests Ottawa isn't making brash decisions. It's being methodical, weighing options like producing an entirely European fleet or adopting a mixed-supported strategy. There's one glaring downside to this approach: flying. Both F-35 jets and European Gripen or Rafale fighters would require different training programs for pilots, separate maintenance facilities, and a fragmented supply chain. Canadian defense officials are well aware of the logistical costs, but the broader goal, being able to hold independence and sovereignty as its trump card, appears to outweigh all else. Indeed, Ottawa's disdain over feeling treated unfairly, as Washington's junior partner, fuels every step of this process. No nation thrives on being a friendly neighbor only to be sidelined on energy policy discussions, trade retaliations, and national defense conversations. And for Carney, keeping the icy Canadian calm in diplomatic rooms isn't enough anymore. Recent statements all but confirm signs of behind-closed-doors talks with Europe over advanced cyber systems, AI-based security, and next-generation platforms designed for the Arctic region. The world is watching, wondering whether Ottawa's approach signals the beginning of a transatlantic shift, or if Canada simply wants leverage. Millions of Canadians are curious about the secret plans circling Ottawa. Rumors swirl that the ministry has been privately assessing the long-term risks of defense dependency, calling out the inherent dangers of relying heavily on just one country, especially amidst hostile pressures like trade wars. One report presented to Canada's Defence Ministry reportedly included the phrase, "Dependence on a single nation may lead to strategic dilemmas in the long term." That line alone sums up Carney's philosophy, as he navigates one of the tensest eras in Canada-US history. But there's another layer many miss. Carney's moves strike as deeply emotional, not petulance, but pride. Few nations trade as much with the US as Canada does, but when Ottawa's own sovereignty hangs in the balance, the line between ally and competitor seems thinner than ever before. Could this be the moment when Canada finally upends the status quo? Could the implications reach far beyond Arctic air bases and buttoned-up NATO meetings? The stakes couldn't be higher. The F-35 stealth fighter may well remain the gold standard for next-generation jets, but just because a technology is groundbreaking doesn't mean it works for every country. Canada may ultimately gamble away cutting-edge American air power for European manufacturing prowess. But that choice isn't just about strategy. It's personal. It's about signaling to Washington that no partnership, however lucrative, can hold when respect and trust are missing. For Canada, one question looms: will asserting its independence lead to greater power or higher costs? Let's dive into this complex scenario. Currently, Canada is at a crossroads. Its decision on which aircraft to purchase is more than a mere matter of procurement. It's a question of strategy, independence, and national identity. The F-35 program, led by Lockheed Martin under U.S. oversight, has come with logistical challenges and economic constraints. On one hand, there is an established logistics pipeline with the United States, including pilot training, maintenance, and spare parts. On the other hand, these ties have sometimes felt restrictive, especially given the polarized relationship between Ottawa and Washington during and after the Trump administration. Enter the proposal to purchase European aircraft. The Eurofighter Typhoon and Dassault Rafale represent more than just alternative fighter jets. They symbolize a potential alignment with European powers, strengthening defense cooperation with Germany, France, and the broader European Union. Imagine Canada signing new framework agreements with European partners that bring fresh strategic ideas to the table while curbing American dominance in defense policymaking. For policymakers in Ottawa, though, this is a double-edged sword. Such a shift would require significant investments in logistics infrastructure, pilot retraining programs, and a supply chain that would now depend on Europe. spare parts, specialized tools, and maintenance contracts would all have to reroute across the Atlantic. This creates challenges, delays, costs, and uncertainty that nobody is overlooking. But if Canada's leaders assess that the long-term strategic benefit outweighs the sacrifice, they might just forge ahead. A move like this, of course, doesn't come without risks, not just logistical, but diplomatic ones. The America First rhetoric of the Trump administration alienated many Canadian officials, prompting them to explore alternatives to U.S.-centric defense cooperation. For Trump critics, aligning with Europe might even feel logical. If relations with Washington reach breaking points, European allies appear to be the natural fallback.